Hugh Beaumont loathed his more than anyone else. Eugene is where Hugh Beaumont was born. He was born on February 16, 1909, in Eudora, Kansas. He grew up in a simple family in the Midwest, where he learned strong moral and spiritual principles that would lead him in his personal and professional life. His early years were shaped by growing up in the middle of the United States. When he eventually moved to California, he was exposed to a wider range of interests, such as the show business and religious studies. Bowman first went to the University of Chattanooga, but then he transferred to the University of Southern California and got his master's in religion there. He was different from many of his Hollywood peers because of his strong faith background. His calling as a preacher never left him, even when he tried to become an actor. When he wasn't on set, he often filled in at churches across Southern California. His faith gave him a lot of inspiration, and it showed in many of his parts, especially as Ward Clever, in a way that made them real and respectful to people of all ages. Hugh started acting in the 1940s and was in a number of low-budget movies and serials. He was usually cast in tough or moral parts. He became famous early on in the film noir genre, mostly for his role as private investigator Michael Shayne in a number of movies. Character actors could count on him during this time because of his height, steady voice, and calm attitude. He was good at switching between psychological tales, westerns, and early TV shows, building a wide range of roles that led to his most famous one. Hugh Beaumont became well known when he was cast as Ward Clever in the 1957 TV show Leave It to Beaver. Americans liked the show about the daily adventures of the Cleaver family in the years after World War II, when people were more conservative. In his role as Ward, Beaumont was the perfect 1950s dad, strict but fair, in charge but loving. His character taught his sons, Wally and the Beaver, moral lessons in a kind way, not by being strict, but by being warm and patient. His chemistry with Barbara Billingsley, who played his wife June on the show, made their family one of the most loved and idolized on TV. At first, the show didn't get a lot of attention, but reruns made it a classic, and Beaumont's performance as the perfect dad on screen became famous. Behind the scenes, Beaumont worked hard to make sure that the set was always professional and polite. A lot of the time, he helped the child actors with their lines and told them to study hard because he cared about their well-being and schooling. He was like a father figure off-screen and in the lives of the people he worked with, which earned him respect and love in the business. After Leave It to Beaver stopped in 1963, Beaumont kept working in movies and TV shows, but not as often. He had small parts on well-known TV shows like Petticoat Junction, Manx, and The Virginia. In addition to acting, he wrote and directed, using his smarts and imagination on projects that were not in front of the camera. He started to spend less time in Hollywood in the late 1960s so that he could focus on his personal life and spiritualities. In Minnesota, he became a tree farmer and liked the peace and ease of living in the country. Hugh Beaumont's skills went far beyond his acting roles, which was a sharp contrast to the busy life of Hollywood. He showed amazing versatility by making a name for himself as both an actor and a good writer over the course of his work. Over the years, Beaumont sold a lot of TV scripts, which showed that he could write interesting stories that would work well on TV during the golden age of TV. He wrote for more than just TV. He also wrote scripts for radio shows, which required clear speech and vivid stories to keep listeners interested since they could only be heard. Beaumont's literary work was not limited to radio and TV, he also wrote short stories that were published in famous magazines of the time. His creative legacy was strengthened by these works, which show how well he understood story and character development, which no doubt helped his acting career. As the entertainment business changed and new possibilities opened up, Beaumont slowly moved away from acting. He left Hollywood spotlight and started a new, surprising business, growing Christmas trees. He bought and ran a farm in Grand Rapids, Minnesota, where he lived a quieter, more grounded life. He worked hard to grow and take care of Christmas trees. This second job not only let him connect with nature, but it was also a nice break from the stress of show business. Beaumont may have found that farming Christmas trees gave him a rhythm and routine that was different from the unpredictable nature of acting parts. This may have been because he wanted stability and simplicity in his later years. Beaumont's busy life was cut short by health problems when he had a stroke in 1970 that left him unable to move or speak. His life changed when this important medical event happened, making him rethink his work obligations. After years of juggling many creative projects with his new job as an agriculturalist, Beaumont publicly stopped acting in 1972. Because he had worked hard on the arts and personal projects for decades, his retirement marked the end of an era in his long and varied career. It was also a well-deserved break. Beaumont's connection to his most famous part stayed strong even after he stopped being in the public eye. In 1980, he made a special appearance at a gathering of Leave It to Beaver cast members put together by a TV station in Los Angeles. This reunion was a heartfelt tribute to how popular the show was and how important Beaumont was to the history of television. It gave fans and co-workers alike a chance to honor his achievements one more time. Also, Beaumont's private life was very important to him and helped shape a lot of who he was. They got married at the Hollywood Congregational Church on April 13, 1941. Catherine Adams Naon was an actor. They got together because they had both worked in the entertainment business, and their relationship lasted over 30 years, which is a long time in a field where relationships tend to end quickly. They raised 3 kids together, Hunter and Mark, 2 sons, and Christy, a girl. Even though they kept their family life pretty quiet, it was clear that Beaumont valued it and saw it as an important part of his life outside of work. Hugh Beaumont and Catherine Adams were married for 33 years before they got a divorce in 1974. This ended their long relationship. The memory of Beaumont lived on through his children, especially Hunter Beaumont, his oldest son. Hunter made his own way away from the fame of Hollywood. He became a therapist and an author. The fact that he worked in mental health and literature shows that he grew up in an intellectual and creative setting. Hunter lived in Germany for many years and made important contributions to the area of psychotherapy around the world until his death in 2023. This fact shows that the Beaumont family had a big impact on many areas around the world. It also shows how Hugh Beaumont's effect went beyond his acting and writing careers. People remember Hugh Beaumont as the calm, patient, and thoughtful father figure Ward Clever on the popular 1950s TV show Leave It to Beaver. However, Hugh Beaumont had personal problems that were very different from how he acted on screen. One of the most surprising things about his time on the show that wasn't talked about much was how much he hated his co-star Tony Dow, who played his made-up son Wally Clever. The show showed a perfect American family, with touching father-son moments and deep lessons about life. But Beaumont and Dow's relationship outside of work was anything but perfect. Hugh Beaumont was an actor who had studied acting in the classical tradition. He was also a man with strong morals who had almost reluctantly entered Hollywood, more out of necessity than desire. He was a Methodist preacher and studied theology before he became famous on TV. He believed in order, respect, and control in his personal life as well as his work life. Anyone who worked with him, no matter what age, had to be just as dedicated and serious about their work as he was. When 12-year-old Tony Dow joined the group, he had never been acting before. At first, Beaumont was understanding, but he quickly became annoyed by what he saw as Dow's lack of discipline and polish. Beaumont didn't like Dow's frequent mistakes, youthful energy, and restlessness behind the scenes. He thought they slowed down the show and made him look less professional than he tried to be. As the show went on, it was said that Beaumont's anger grew. He thought Tony Dow was the weak link in a group that was mostly committed to keeping the show's happy, heartfelt tone that made it a hit. Even though Dow was becoming more famous with fans and had a natural connection with Jerry Matz, Beaver, Beaumont supposedly saw him as a young actor who wasn't disciplined and didn't respect the older cast or the crew. Some people close to the situation have even said that Beaumont secretly tried to get Dow replaced, but it never happened. There were also problems because they were from different generations and had different personalities. Beaumont was a conservative who had strong opinions about how families should act and what the moral duties of TV were. In contrast, Dow grew up in the late 1950s and early 1960s, a time when social norms were changing, teens and young adults rebelled, and rules were becoming less strict. Even though Dow wasn't rude, Beaumont often saw his careless behavior and lack of experience as signs of laziness or lack of dedication. These differences made the gap between them even bigger on an emotional and intellectual level. It was clear that Beaumont saw himself as a father figure, and when Dow didn't live up to his own expectations, he became even more angry. There were also rumors that Dow, as he got older and more sure of himself, sometimes questioned orders or made ideas about his personality. Some people might have seen this as a sign of growth or initiative, but Beaumont thought it was going too far. Beaumont couldn't stand it when a teenager acted out in this way in front of an experienced actor. He saw it as a sign of a larger problem in society: people don't respect adults and authority as much as they used to. The people thought they were getting along great, which showed how professional both actors were. But behind closed doors, it was tense. People who were close to the production say that Beaumont put on a respectful front and never let his personal feelings get in the way of his performance. However, they also say that they could see him getting antsy during practices and sometimes when he talked to Dow. Some people even thought that Beaumont's lack of connection with Dow made him even less happy with Leave It to Beaver as a whole, a show he sometimes felt limited his artistic range. Hugh Beaumont was said to be glad to leave the part and his troubled relationship with Tony Dow behind by the end of the 6th season of the show. When he talked about his time on Leave It to Beaver in public, he was polite, but when he talked about Dow in interviews, it was clearly less warm than when he talked about other cast members. People who knew him well thought that his job relationship with Tony Dow was the one he had the most trouble with and maybe even disliked the most. In later years, Dow and other cast members, like Jerry Matz, often talked about how much they loved being on the show. Dow didn't seem to know or care about Beaumont's anger, or he may have chosen to ignore it. Even so, Tony Dow's appearance made Beaumont very angry because it went against the perfect picture of family unity that everyone saw on TV every week. Hugh Beaumont had a heart attack while there to see his son Hunter in Munich, West Germany, on May 14, 1982. He was 72 years old. His death ended a long and interesting life that included many things besides his famous part as Ward Clever on the hit TV show Leave It to Beaver. Although Beaumont's death was sad for the entertainment world, it was also sad for people who knew him in the many other roles he played in his life. Hugh Beaumont wasn't just an actor who worked on TV. He also had a strong faith and belief in what he did. Beaumont was a licensed Methodist preacher who had studied theology and kept his religious credentials up even as his acting career took off. He was involved in church life even though he wasn't a full-time pastor. He was known to lead funerals, marry people, and give eulogies for family, friends, and people in his community. His gentle personality, strong morals, and commanding presence made him a great fit for these jobs, and many people who attended the ceremonies said how sincere and emotional he made them. These actions weren't performances for Beaumont, he saw them as chances to comfort, guide, and lead spiritually, showing even more of the caring personality that many people linked with his character on screen. Beaumont was very religious, but he was also very talented in many areas, including singing. Even before he became famous on TV, he was a great jazz drummer, and he kept doing what he loved all his life. He often played with small jazz groups in his area and liked working with other players in unplanned jam sessions. Beaumont really liked rhythm and tune, and his drumming was known for being both technically sound and emotionally powerful. Music was a creative outlet for Beaumont that brought him a lot of joy, whether he was playing in small clubs or just drumming with friends for fun. His musical skills added another layer to his complicated personality and showed a side of him that not many people who liked him as an actor ever saw. Hugh Beaumont found peace in nature, away from the cameras and studio lights. He spent a lot of his free time enjoying nature because he loved being outside. One of his best things to do was fish, and he would often take long trips to lakes and rivers that were far away, sometimes with friends and other times by himself. He liked camping and hiking both, and he loved the peace and simplicity of being in the woods, mountains, or near a stream. He could get away from the stresses of Hollywood and get in touch with the calmer, more reflective parts of himself during these trips into the woods. Beaumont's family and friends often talked about how much he cared about the environment and how he thought spending time in nature was good for the soul. Even though he had a serious image as the typical 1950s TV dad, Beaumont was known for having a dry and often very sharp sense of humor among his co-workers. He kept his co-stars on the set of Leave It to Beaver amused with smart stories, playful teasing, and a steady stream of puns and jokes. Later, actors like Jerry Matz and Tony Dow talked about how Beaumont kept things light during long days of shooting. He would often use his wit to ease tension or just make someone's day better. People laughed long after the punchline had been delivered because of his sly and smart sense of humor. It was an important part of who he was, and it helped bring the group together and create the warm family chemistry that viewers loved on screen. Hugh Beaumont had a life that was full of variety, depth, and kindness. He was honest, kind, and smart in everything he did, whether he was helping a family through grief, playing the drums in a noisy jazz club, hiking a mountain trail, or watching TV together. Not only will his legacy live on through reruns of Leave It to Beaver, but so will the lives he touched and the way he lived as a man of honor, skill, and heart.